A government which does not trust its citizens to be armed is not itself to be trusted. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. A sign of intelligence is an awareness of one's own ignorance. It is better to act and repent than not to act and regret. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Always assume incompetence before looking for conspiracy. Politics have no relation to morals. Power is the pivot on which everything hinges. He who has the power is always right, the weaker is always wrong. It is just as difficult and dangerous to try to free a people that wants to remain servile as it is to enslave a people that wants to remain free. Never do an enemy a small injury. Any man who tries to be good all the time is bound to come to ruin among the great number who are not good. Men are so stupid and concerned with their present needs, they will always let themselves be deceived. Men in general judge more from appearances than from reality. All men have eyes, but few have the gift of penetration. One who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. Men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear. It is double pleasure to deceive the deceiver. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. The more sand has escaped from the hourglass of our life, the clearer we should see through it. Make no small plans, for they have no power to stir the soul. A battle that you win cancels all your mistakes. The unarmed man is not just defenseless, he is also contemptible. There is nothing as likely to succeed as what the enemy believes you cannot attempt. Never was anything great achieved without danger. I'm not interested in preserving the status quo, I want to overthrow it. Make mistakes of ambition and not mistakes of sloth. Develop the strength to do bold things, not to suffer. If an injury has to be done to a man, it should be so severe that his vengeance need not be feared. There is no surer sign of decay in a country than to see the rights of religion held in contempt. Impetuosity and audacity often achieve what ordinary means fail to achieve. There is nothing more important than appearing to be religious. Ability and perseverance are the weapons of weakness. The ends justifies the means. The leader should know how to enter into evil when necessity commands. Before all else, be armed. Gold will not always get you good soldiers, but good soldiers can get you gold. No enterprise is more likely to succeed than one concealed from the enemy until it is ripe for execution. How perilous it is to free a people who prefer slavery. Hatred is gained as much by good works as by evil. It has always been the opinion and judgment of wise men that nothing can be so uncertain as fame or power not founded on its own strength. One should never fall in the belief that you can find someone to pick you up. He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. A wise ruler should rely on what is under his own control, not on what is under the control of others. The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. Wars begin when you will, but they do not end when you please. There is no other way to guard yourself against flattery than by making men understand that telling you the truth will not offend you. Where the willingness is great, the difficulties cannot be great. Appear as you may wish to be. La Sheawakian Mountlak Baal Kulaun Mounkain, we work in the dark to serve the light. It is better to be adventurous than cautious, because fortune is a woman. Whoever is the cause of another becoming powerful is ruined himself. For the mob is always impressed by appearances and by results, and the world is composed of the mob. He who builds on the people builds on the mud. The best fortress which a prince can possess is the affection of his people. There is no avoiding war. It can only be postponed to the advantage of others. Change has no constituency. He who has once begun to live by rapine always finds reasons for taking what is not his. A prince never lacks legitimate reasons to break his promise. The peasant wants only to be left alone to prosper in peace. A battle that you win cancels any other bad action of yours. In the same way, by losing one, all the good things worked by you before become vain. Results are often obtained by impetuosity and daring which could never have been obtained by ordinary methods. It is a common failing of man not to take account of tempests during fair weather. Few men are brave by nature, but good discipline and experience make many so. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. A wise man will see to it that his acts always seem voluntary and not done by compulsion, however much he may be compelled by necessity. For this is the tragedy of man's circumstances change, but he does not. All the armed prophets conquered, all the unarmed ones perished. There is nothing so difficult or so dangerous as to undertake to change the order of things. Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceptions. To be feared is much safer than to be loved. Good order makes men bold, and confusion cowards. So in all human affairs one notices, if one examines them closely, that it is impossible to remove one inconvenience without another emerging. He who, blinded by ambition, raises himself to a position whence he cannot mount higher, must thereafter fall with the greatest loss. Men should be either treated generously or destroyed, because they take revenge for slight injuries, for heavy ones they cannot. You have to be a prince to understand the people, and you have to belong to the people to understand the princes. Men rise from one ambition to another. First, they seek to secure themselves against attack, and then they attack others. Whosoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times. Nothing feeds upon itself as liberality does. Men are always wicked at bottom unless they are made good by some compulsion. One must be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. One should never permit a disorder to persist in order to avoid a war, for wars cannot be avoided and can only be deferred to the advantage of. Wisdom consists in being able to distinguish among dangers and make a choice of the least harmful. Therefore it is unnecessary for a prince to have all the good qualities I have enumerated, but it is very necessary to appear to have them. Half of these aren't even Machiavelli, some are Plato, Thucydides, etc. Doesn't anyone check these? Among other evils which being unarmed brings you, it causes you to be despised. Fear is secured by a dread of punishment. When neither their property nor their honor is touched, the majority of men live content. Men generally decide upon a middle course, which is most hazardous, for they know neither how to be entirely good nor entirely bad. It is a foolish prince who entrusts the safety of his lands to hired men. Nature creates few men brave, industry and training makes many. He who makes war his profession cannot be otherwise than vicious. War makes thieves, and peace brings them to the gallows. For, in truth, there is no sure way of holding other than by destroying. Princes should delegate to others the enactment of unpopular measures and keep in their own hands the means of winning favors. The chief foundations of all states, new as well as old or composite, are good laws and good arms. Men are always averse to enterprises in which they foresee difficulties. Prudence therefore consists in knowing how to distinguish degrees of disadvantage. The prince must be a lion, but he must also know how to play the fox. A wise ruler ought never to keep faith when by doing so it would be against his interests. One change always leaves the way open for the establishment of others. Forgiveness proceeds from a generous soul. Men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony. The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar. God creates men, but they choose each other. The fact is that a man who wants to act virtuously in every way necessarily comes to grief among so many who are not virtuous. One must consider the final result. Hence it comes that all armed prophets have been victorious, and all unarmed prophets have been destroyed. Speaking generally, men are ungrateful, fickle, hypocritical, fearful o danger, and covetous o gain. In our own days we have seen no princes accomplish great results save those who have been accounted miserly. Necessities can be many, but the one that is stronger is that which constrains you to win or to die. Men as a whole judge more with their eyes than with their hands. To ensure victory, the troops must have confidence in themselves as well as in their commanders. Tardiness often robs us opportunity and the dispatch of our forces. When men receive favors from someone they expected to do them ill, they are under a greater obligation to their benefactor. So far as he is able, a prince should stick to the path of good, but if the necessity arises, he should know how to follow evil. Wisdom consists of knowing how to distinguish the nature of trouble and in choosing the lesser evil. A man who is used to acting in one way never changes. He must come to ruin when the times, in changing, no longer are in harmony with his ways. Men ought either to be well treated or crushed. The new ruler must determine all the injuries that he will need to inflict. He must inflict them once and for all. Men shrink less from offending one who inspires love than one who inspires fear. It is better to be bold than too circumspect, because fortune is of a sex which likes not a tardy wooer, and repulses all who are not ardent. One arises from a low to a high station more often by using fraud instead of force. For government consists in nothing else but so controlling subjects that they shall neither be able to, nor have cause to do harm. We have not seen great things done in our time except by those who have been considered mean. The rest have failed. There should be many judges, for few will always do the will of few. God is not willing to do everything, and thus take away our free will, and that share of glory which belongs to us. He who neglects what is done for what ought to be done, sooner affects his ruin than his preservation. Men are more apt to be mistaken in their generalizations than in their particular observations. One should never allow chaos to develop in order to avoid going to war, because one does not avoid a war, but instead puts it off to his disadvantage. In respect to foresight and firmness, the people are more prudent, more stable, and have better judgment than princes. The princes who have done great things are the ones who have taken little account of their promises. The nature of man is such that people consider themselves put under an obligation as much by the benefits they confer as by those they receive. Princes and governments are far more dangerous than other elements within society. The world has always been the same, and there is always as much good fortune as bad in it. All the states and governments by which men or ever have been ruled have been and are either republics or princedoms. War is just when it is necessary. Arms are permissible when there is no hope except in arms. The forces of adversaries are more diminished by the loss of those who flee than of those who are killed. The innovator has for enemies all who have done well under the old, and lukewarm defenders in those who may do well under the new. Nothing is of greater importance in time of war than in knowing how to make the best use of a fair opportunity when it is offered. When every province of the world so teems with inhabitants that they can neither subsist where they are nor remove themselves elsewhere. Good order and discipline in any army are to be depended upon more than courage alone. The reformer has enemies in all who profit by the old order, and only lukewarm defenders in all those who would profit by the new order. For without invention, no one was ever a great man in his own trade. The greatest remedy that is used against a plan of the enemy is to do voluntarily what he plans, that you do by force. Since it is difficult to join them together, it is safer to be feared than to be loved when one of the two must be lacking. Nothing is so unhealthy or unstable as the reputation for power that is not based on one's own power. It is much safer for the prince to be feared than loved, but he ought to avoid making himself hated. So long as the great majority of men are not deprived of either property or honor, they are satisfied. With difficulty he is beaten who can estimate his own forces and those of his enemy. The sinews of war are not gold, but good soldiers, for gold alone will not procure good soldiers, but good soldiers will always procure gold. The sinews of war are not gold, but good soldiers, for gold alone will not procure good soldiers, but good soldiers will always procure gold. He who would foresee what is to happen should look to what has happened, for all that is has its counterpart in time past. A son can bear with equanimity the loss of his father, but the loss of his inheritance may drive him to despair. Benefits should be conferred gradually, and in that way they will taste better. In war, discipline can do more than fury. War brings out thieves and peace hangs them. In conclusion, the arms of others either fall from your back, or they weigh you down, or they bind you fast. Cruelties should be committed all at once. Men walk almost always in the paths trodden by others, proceeding in their actions by imitation. One never finds anything perfectly pure and exempt from danger. A blast in the human breast is nothing to boast of. Of mankind we may say in general they are fickle, hypocritical, and greedy of gain. Therefore, it is necessary to be a fox to discover the snares, and a lion to terrify the wolves. He who is the cause of another's advancement is thereby the cause of his own ruin. When they remain in garrison, soldiers are maintained with fear and punishment, when they are then led to war with hope and reward. For as good habits of the people require good laws to support them, so laws, to be observed, need good habits on the part of the people. Men are more ready to offend one who desires to be beloved than one who wishes to be feared. Present wars impoverish the lords that win as much as those that lose. For titles do not reflect honor on men, but rather men on their titles. Men are so simple and yield so readily to the desires of the moment that he who will trick will always find another who will suffer to be tricked. We cannot attribute to fortune or virtue that which is achieved without either. A prince ought to have two fears, one from within, on account of his subjects, the other from without, on account of external powers. The Swiss are well armed and enjoy great freedom. Human beings remain constant in their methods of conduct. The one who adapts his policy to the times prospers, and likewise that the one whose policy clashes with the demands of the times does not. A son could bear with great complacency the death of his father, while the loss of his inheritance might drive him to despair. Every little advantage is of great moment when men have to come to blows. They have not any difficulties on the way up because they fly, but they have many when they reach the summit. Is it better to be loved or feared? Those who become princes through their skill acquire the principality with difficulty, but they hold on to it with ease. To know well the nature of the people one must be a prince, and to know well the nature of princes one must be of the people. For one change always leaves a dovetail into which another will fit. Any harm you do to a man should be done in such a way that you need not fear his revenge. Wise men say, and not without reason, that whosoever wished to foresee the future might consult the past. One should never risk one's whole fortune unless supported by one's entire forces. Cannot and should not keep his word when to do so would go against his interests, or when the reason he pledged it no longer holds. People are by nature fickle, and it is easy to persuade them of something, but difficult to keep them persuaded. There is nothing that nature seems to have inclined us to as much as society. It behooves us to adapt oneself to the times if one wants to enjoy continued good fortune. Nature that framed us of 4 elements, warring within our breasts for regiment, doth teach us all to have aspiring minds. To know in war how to recognize an opportunity and seize it is better than anything else. The incredulity of mankind, who do not truly believe in anything new until they have had actual experience of it. Only those means of security are good, are certain, are lasting, that depend on yourself and your own vigor. Among other causes of misfortune which your not being armed brings upon you, it makes you despised. Men are able to assist fortune but not to thwart her. They can weave her designs, but they cannot destroy them. Never do your enemy a minor injury. The end of the Republic is to enervate and to weaken all other bodies so as to increase its own body. Benefits should be granted little by little, so that they may be better enjoyed. Since the handling of arms is a beautiful spectacle, it is delightful to young men. For whoever conquers a free town and does not demolish it commits a great error and may expect to be ruined himself. It is much better to tempt fortune where it can favor you than to see your certain ruin by not tempting it. The sinews of war are not gold, but good soldiers. For as laws are necessary that good manners be preserved, so there is need of good manners that law may be maintained. Men may second fortune, but they cannot thwart her. If the course of human affairs be considered, it will be seen that many things arise against which heaven does not allow us to guard. Which quote did you like the most? Share your opinion in the comments. Don't miss out on a chance to see the next video. Subscribe.